Welcome back. Great to have you with us on Business Review. Members of global and African law enforcement, revenue and customs agencies are currently meeting in Cape Town to discuss the scourge of illicit tobacco, a sophisticated network of illegal cigarette smugglers spread out across southern Africa. And many of the dodgy smokes land up here in South Africa. South Africa listed among the top 5 illicit markets globally. Last year, an estimated 1 in 3 cigarettes smoked in the country were illegal. The figure is still around 1 in 5. Around 700 million illicit cigarettes were seized during 2013, but millions more passed through South African ports undetected. Illegal cigarettes have not been declared for the so-called sin taxes, and many of them come cheap. It's estimated that more than 20 billion rand in taxes that could have been spent on housing or development has been lost since 2010. One of the things the conference will be looking at is the potential for smuggling to move to other southern African regions while South Africa clamps down. Well, let's look more closely at this. We're now joined by Francois van der Merwe from the Tobacco Institute, representing many of the established branding houses. He's live from our studio in Cape Town. Thank you for joining us, Francois. There's been a reduction in the past year. So we were at about 31% of all cigarettes being illegal last year, down to 23%. But how is this still happening with such flagrancy in South Africa?
Francis, thank you very much. The problem is still big enough for us to initiate this conference, because whether it's 1 in 3, 1 in 4, 1 in 5, it's still a massive problem. And for us who are serious about the future of our country, for our kids, for our children, for our people and for our societies and communities, we're going to have to work much, much harder, because a quarter of the market is still illegal. And I can spell out to you, the financial and the social impacts of this scourge is reason enough to call a conference of this magnitude, because we're going to have to become more serious, more focused and more collaborative as a region, and in partnerships between the tobacco industry, the legal industry and governments to bring this down. And we are positive that it can be done, because once government started applying dedicated resources and dedicated attention to some of these illicit manufacturers, we suddenly saw the figure came down. But there's still a lot to do, and we believe there's still some low-hanging fruits which can be picked. Illicit cigarettes forms part of a bigger and a broader illicit economy, and it's got to be tackled head on. We need the political will, and we cannot build our country and the future of this country on the back of illegal activities.
Okay, so you're saying still 1 in 4, about 23%. Is it this simple that you know that you're probably smoking an illegal cigarette if it's ridiculously cheap?
Most definitely, yes. Francis, there's a number of indicators, and as I said, all of us will have to work much, much harder, and consumers and the general public out there have as big a responsibility as we have, as the tobacco industry and as governments have in this region, because that's where it starts. It's not just an innocent buying of a bargain if you buy a packet of illegal cigarettes. It seems like it, and you're just defrauding the government. But the social impacts of illicit cigarettes is much, much broader. We saw today in the conference, we heard speakers who know talking about cigarettes being the money spinner, because it's a highly movable consumer good. It sells like hotcake. It generates money. It's a money spinner. And we saw today how that money is used, it's laundered and used to fund, for example, human trafficking for young girls operating as sex workers. We've heard from Interpol that it funds drug trafficking, that it funds weapon smuggling. So it forms part of a broader illicit economy, and consumers, it starts with consumers. So if you buy cheap cigarettes, you're not buying a bargain. We from the Tobacco Institute reckon that through thorough research, if you pay less than 16 Rand 50 for a packet of 20, certainly the alarm bells must go on, because tobacco is a highly taxed product. 11 Rand 60 is excise on a packet alone. That goes to government. Add another 2 Rand on a price of 16.50 for VAT, then you're at 13 Rand 60. So certainly, if you pay 10 Rand for a packet of cigarettes, it's certainly below the tax threshold, and it's clearly illegal. And that funds organized crime, it feeds corruption, it erodes investor confidence in our country, it paints our country and our region with a bad reputation.
I need to get another
question. We want investors. We need
You're concerned, obviously your members are also concerned because this is cheap competition as well. And I do need to touch on something. Increasingly there is a concern that there is this unintended consequence that the big established brands are helping to fight this, but they're also working with the main law enforcement agencies, and that's creating some incestuousness. BAT has been accused of spying on competitors. Should we be worried about the relationships that are forming in this fight against illicit cigarettes?
Francis, in South Africa and in our region, the illicit efforts are all done through TISA. So companies don't do these things on their own, number one. Number two, there's a lot of allegations flying around, and it's a typical tactic from those who operate in the illegal market to deflect the attention away from them by accusing the so-called bigger brands. TISA's members are big and small. And there is no such a thing as cheap competition. We welcome all competition as long as the playing field is level, as long as all brands comply with government regulations and on all brands taxes are paid. So we do not mind competition, but what we do mind is an unlevel playing field where some brands on the market are not compliant and do not pay taxes. And against that, we will keep fighting. And we must move away from the allegations that are flying around, because as long as the playing field is level, brands should fight it out on their quality, on their pricing, and on their brands itself.
Where do you stand on the taxes? Because many people argue that the sin taxes are so high that it increases the incentive for these smugglers.
Well, the higher the taxes, the more the incentive for the smugglers. You're absolutely spot on. And that's why we disagree with the global efforts by the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control to drive a tax threshold of 70%. In South Africa, we have 52% tax threshold, which means that 52% of tobacco products go to government. The other 48% is shared between the value chain players. But our National Treasury has been very sensible over the past 7-8 years to maintain the threshold at 52%. Yet it is the highest in the region, and that's why we find that products are smuggled into South Africa, because if you evade the 52% tax here or the R11.60 excise per pack, that is your profit margin. So taxation plays a huge role, and that's again where government and industry needs to work together to find the optimum level where government gets what it's due to get, and the legal industry can still maintain its volumes, pay its taxes, invest in this country, and build this country to make it a better place for all of us.
And so we're the lucrative market, we attract a lot of smugglers, but we're clamping down. And apparently there is this effect where the smugglers will then move to the other territories. Are the other countries already complaining about that?
Absolutely, yes, because all the countries around us are involved. There's either a source country or a destination country or a transit country. And criminal activities and criminal syndicates don't know borders of countries, so they move across. Wherever you clamp down a little bit in one market, it'll just shift to another market, because the manufacturing capacity, and this is a frightening figure, the manufacturing capacity is of such a nature that in our region, it can take over the entire legal industry. It can provide and flood the market with illicit products in totality. And then everybody will be losers. Governments will not collect taxes. The legal industry won't invest. Investors will flee from the country. Farmers will be involved in a nasty, illegal network of providing tobacco leaf to illegal manufacturers. So that's why I say this conference is to raise the awareness, build the relationships, try and get the political will from governments, because that's where it starts. And all of us, and we offer our commitment to government that we will work together to stamp it out, because we believe it's possible, and we're optimistic that if we get the political will from the highest level in our countries and in our region, and we cooperate, we can rid our country and we can become the preferred region for investors.
Thank you so much. That was Francois van der Merwe from the Tobacco Institute of South Africa.